Evan never blended in. At school, he was the invisible mark, the boy everyone saw just long enough to remember they'd rather not see him at all. They called him a wimp, but what he craved was simple: to be noticed, accepted, maybe even wanted. But standing at 5'5", rail thin, and graceless as a colt on ice, he became the running joke of every gym class. No matter how desperately he tried, Evan's name was always whispered as the cautionary tale: the guy you didn't want on your team. Now, at 17, he'd had enough. He was done being the ghost at the edge of the crowd, tired of carrying loneliness like a scarlet letter, tired of the quiet, suffocating sense that no one wanted him anywhere. Then, by a twist of fate, he met Lori. She'd just moved to the neighborhood, and they crossed paths at the lake one restless afternoon, each lost in their own thoughts about the future. Something drew Evan over some unspoken instinct, told him she might understand what it felt like to not fit in. "Hi, I'm Evan. Mind if I join you?" he said, surprising even himself with the confidence. Lori, glancing up at the skinny, awkward stranger, felt an unexpected spark of kinship. "Sure, I'm Lori." He learned she'd only arrived the week before. Her mom's promotion had brought them to town, and with just one term left before graduation, they decided Lori would actually try regular school Riverside High, starting Monday. Evan's grin couldn't be contained. "That's where I go. Maybe we'll survive it together." "Where are you living?" When she told him, he laughed. "You're practically my neighbor. I'm just a few houses down Maple." They sat for hours, talking about nothing and everything. With Lori, there was none of the icy distance or backhanded remarks he was used to. It was just easy, simple, genuine. She wasn't classically beautiful, but that hardly mattered to Evan. In fact, she was taller, broader, more at ease in her body than he'd ever been. For once, he felt seen. The next day, unable to resist, Evan walked by Lori's house, hoping for another accidental meeting. There she was, sitting with her mother on the porch. "Hi, Lori. Thought I'd stop by." Lori's face lit up. She introduced him to her mother, Donna, who sized him up with a skeptical smile before agreeing Lori could go to the park, so long as she was back for dinner. They returned to their spot by the lake, the place that had become their little sanctuary. Evan, in a rare burst of confidence, bought them both ice cream from a passing vendor. They traded stories about being Outcast Lori, teased for her looks for as long as she could remember. Evan, dismissed as weak and weird. The girls keeping their distance, the boys openly derisive. But he wasn't about to let that stop him from building this new friendship. "There's a group at school that thinks you're invisible if you're not blonde, bronzed, and beautiful. Be careful. They don't need a reason to be cruel." Lori just scoffed, her voice edged with something like anger. "You think I haven't noticed? All my life, people cared more about how I looked than who I was. It hurts, but you get used to it. I just don't let them win." Evan squeezed her hand in silent agreement, and they sat together, drawing comfort from the shared quiet. Sunday came, and Evan stopped by Lori's again, but she and her mom were out. On Monday, he was at her door early, ready to walk to school together. They didn't hold hands, but the thought lingered between them. As expected, the school's beautiful people wasted no time reminding Evan where he stood in the pecking order, and they treated Lori as if she was radioactive. That afternoon, Lori had a wild idea. "Evan, I know it sounds strange, but just hear me out. There's that Springfest dance coming up, right?" Evan nodded, already dreading it. "I want to take you to the dance, but here's the twist: I want you to go as the girl. Trust me, I know I look better as a guy than I ever did as a girl. Let me dress you up. If you hate it, we forget the whole thing. But if you look as good as I think you will, you let me take you as the girl. Deal?" Her words hit Evan like a punch to the gut. The idea was terrifying. He could already imagine the ridicule. "Me? At the dance? Like that? I'd be toast." Lori just smiled, full of mischief and challenge. "Just trust me." What do you have to lose? What Lori suggested was so outrageous, Evan almost laughed. Still, he found himself saying, I'll think about it, Lori. No promises, though, all right? She grinned, her eyes bright with mischief. All right, no promises. But if you do it, you let me be the one to dress you. That's non-negotiable. The enormity of it all pressed down on Evan, leaving him quiet as they sat together. That evening, standing in front of his bedroom mirror, Evan studied his reflection. A skinny body, long, stringy blonde hair, barely any muscle to speak of. He thought of Samantha, his older sister, a high school beauty queen, and tried to picture himself as even half that put together. If he ever wanted to go to a dance, maybe Lori was right. Maybe he should have been a girl. He made his decision, shaky but determined. The next day after school, he caught up with Lori and quietly told her he'd give it a shot. Her reaction was pure sunshine. Yes! I'll pull everything together. We'll try this out Saturday. She couldn't stop smiling, and suddenly Evan felt a flutter of excitement mixed with pure dread. Saturday came, and with nerves jangling, Evan made his way to Lori's house. She welcomed him inside with a conspiratorial wink. Come in. Mom's working all day, so we've got the place to ourselves. Evan hesitated but pressed on, swallowing his anxiety. You're going to have to shave everything, Evan. Trust me, you do not want to be the hairy girl at the party. Not a good look. Oh, and wash your hair, use the conditioner. She handed him a towel, and he retreated to the bathroom. He shaved what little body hair he had, legs, arms, underarms, though his youth left the rest of him mostly smooth already. When he was done, he called for Lori, who cracked open the door and handed him a pair of crisp white panties and a soft robe. Put these on and come out when you're ready. He complied, then stepped awkward, nervous into her room. There, Lori was waiting beside a neatly folded pile of clothes, barely suppressing a laugh as she caught the embarrassment on Evan's face. Relax, it's not a strip show, she teased. Still, Evan retreated to the bathroom to compose himself, re-emerging only when he could trust his body to behave. Lori got to work. Stand right here, arms up. She wrapped him in a corset and began tightening the laces with determined efficiency. Evan huffed and puffed as his waist shrank down to a waspish 21 inches. His chest pushed upward, just enough to fill the built-in bra, enhanced with 2 small foam pads she slipped inside. Instant curves, she announced. Next, she slid silky nylons up his legs and showed him how to fasten the garters. At her vanity, Lori brushed out Evan's hair, using the blow dryer and a determined arsenal of hair products to give him unfamiliar volume and style. She plucked his eyebrows into a gentle arch, layered on foundation from her mother's makeup drawer, swept bold blue eyeshadow across his lids, and traced black eyeliner with a steady hand. Mascara came last, Lori's own secret weapon. Eyes pop, nerves drop, she winked. Then came the dress. A white cocktail number with a chiffon skirt and a fitted bodice, neckline straight across, size 8. Her eyes gleamed as it zipped up perfectly, hugging Evan's altered frame. White shoes appeared, finished with bright red clips on the toes. She added rhinestone earrings and a matching necklace, then sat him for the final touch, a sweep of bright red lipstick, brushed on with precision. All right, Lori said, spinning his chair toward the full-length mirror. Take a look. Evan stared, dumbstruck. He looked exactly like Samantha had, at her best, a near-mirror image. I can't believe it. I look like my sister. Lori just grinned and squeezed his shoulder. Told you. You're gorgeous. But if you're going to pull this off, you need to learn the ropes, how to move, walk in heels, the whole deal. Clothes are just the start. That hadn't occurred to Evan. He'd figured he could just put on the outfit, show up, and survive. How am I supposed to practice? Where can we even do that? He asked, suddenly realizing just how deep into this plan he already was. The best way, Lori declared, rifling through her closet, is to get you into something less fancy and take you out on a real date. Movies, dinner, the works. You need practice in the wild. Evan, still half paralyzed by the thought of stepping outside in girls' clothes, barely managed a nod. She unzipped the white dress and handed him a neat dark blue skirt, a crisp white blouse, and a soft pale blue sweater. "You'll need a slip first," she said, and after a few awkward moments, Evan changed into the new outfit. She swapped his jewelry for simple gold pieces, slipped black flats onto his feet, and handed him a little black purse filled with all the mysterious essentials girls seem to carry. "Hold tight, I'll get changed," Lori called, and disappeared into the bathroom. When she returned, there was no trace of Lori at all. A slim, well-dressed young man stood in her place. "I go by Ken when I'm like this. And you, Barbie. Barbara, to be proper. Ready?" Ken took Barbara by the arm and led her outside. 3 blocks to the theater, every step surreal, the world looking at Evan, but not as Evan. Instead, she felt the soft swish of the skirt, caught a hint of perfume, and noticed more than a few curious glances from passing boys. At the cinema, Ken did everything right: popcorn, soda, a hand on her back to guide her through the crowd. Every gesture made Barbara feel seen in a way Evan never had. Even the little crisis, "I have to pee, now what?" was met with Lori's easy confidence. "Ladies' room, obviously. Get used to it." Heart-pounding, Barbara managed it without a hitch, slipping in and out without a single person giving her a second glance. After the movie, Ken suggested the one place that made Barbara's blood run cold: Diner 21, the local teen haunt. "No way! Everyone will see me," she hissed. Ken just grinned. "You're safe if you play it cool. Nobody's going to guess." And he was right. Heads turned as they walked in, but only to check out the new girl in town. Barbara let Ken order, tried to imitate the other girls' easy postures, and slowly started to relax, blending in so completely that she almost forgot to be nervous. Hand in hand, they walked home. But as they reached Lori's porch, both froze. Both their mothers sat waiting, expectant. "Hi, you two," Lori's mother called, her tone warm, almost amused. Evan's mother looked at her child, all dressed up, and just watched, calm and gentle. They were invited inside. The conversation was direct. Evan's mother asked the question head-on. "Evan, why are you wearing girls' clothes? Why didn't you tell me?" He hesitated, but in this new skin, surrounded by people who cared, he found a sliver of courage. "Mom, I've always been the butt of every joke. Too small, too awkward, never picked for anything. No friends. Lori thought I could try something different, be someone else, just for one dance. I figured, what have I got to lose? Today, we went out and nobody recognized me. Some of the guys even tried to flirt." He braced himself for the backlash, but his mother's eyes were soft, sad. "I always knew they teased you, honey, but maybe I never realized how deeply it hurt. What does Lori call you?" "Barbara," he admitted, almost shy. "She says I'm her Barbie." The mothers slipped away to the kitchen, leaving Barbara and Ken holding their breath in the living room. "What do you think they'll say?" Barbara whispered. "I hope they let us keep going," Ken replied. When the mothers returned, Evan's mother's voice trembled just a little. "Evan, losing Samantha last year was devastating. Seeing you now, so much like her. If you want to keep doing this, I want to help you. You're beautiful, honey. If you need support, you'll have it from me." Evan, stunned, barely registered Lori's mother chiming in as well. "There will be some ground rules, kids," Lori's mother announced, her tone gentle but firm. "This stays between us. No one else is to know. And from now on, if you're not at school, you're dressed just like this. We'll help you, guide your changes, and pick out your clothes." Lori sprang up and hugged both mothers, Evan right behind her, swept up in the sudden wave of acceptance. "Can I show you what I wanted to wear to the dance, Mom?" Barbara asked, voice trembling with hope. "Of course, Barb. We'll wait right here." In a blur, Barbara slipped into the white dress, and Lori retouched her makeup and lipstick with careful hands. Barbara stood in the doorway, breath held, as both mothers fell into stunned silence. She was beautiful, radiant. The dress hugged her body just so, her small chest filling the bodice, white heels elevating her stance, and a cloud of perfume surrounding her, as if she belonged in that world all along. "My goodness, Barbie, you're a knockout!" Lori's mother beamed. Evan's mother nodded, just as awed. "I never imagined my son could look like this. Walk for us, Barb." Slowly, Barbara crossed the room, each step growing more confident. The gentle swish of her nylons, the click of heels she felt at home in a way she'd never experienced before. And the more time she spent dressed this way, the more right it felt, as if some hidden part of her was finally being given air to breathe. "You'd better change back," Evan's mom finally said. "We need to head home. Let's see if some of Samantha's clothes will fit you." Barbara slipped back into the skirt and blouse, snatched her purse, and told Lori she'd pick up her boy clothes later. For the first time in her life, Evan felt whole, like a missing puzzle piece had finally clicked into place. If someone had asked, she'd have told them she wanted to be a girl forever. Back home, Barbara struggled with the corset. "Mom, can you help?" Her mother came in, loosening the laces, and when Barbara was left in nothing but a robe and panties, her mother quietly measured her, jotting down notes with a gentle, almost reverent touch. After Samantha's death, Mrs. Walker had left her daughter's room untouched, an accidental shrine no one quite dared to disturb. Now she took a deep breath and led Barbara inside. The familiar scent of Samantha's perfume lingered in the air, heavy with memory, but both mother and child pressed forward. "Barb, if you'd rather not," her mother started, but Barbara shook her head. "No, it's fine. Samantha had great taste, and we can't afford to start from scratch." Together, they pulled back the curtains, letting the light in and the memories settle. Samantha had been curvier, but with some padding, Barbara would make it work. She changed openly, unashamed, and together they tried on skirts, dresses, slips, and bras, sorting them into piles: what fit, what needed altering, what wouldn't work at all. "You'll need some things of your own," her mother mused, making a mental shopping list. Panties, makeup, a blow dryer, brushes, even breast forms and a padded girdle. The evening passed in a haze of discovery and quiet laughter. Mother and child talked in a way they never had before about life, about Samantha, about dreams never spoken aloud. Evan confessed that wearing these clothes, living as Barbara, made her feel alive, like she'd finally found herself. "I can't ever replace Samantha, Mom, but maybe I can be your daughter too, if you'll let me." Tears in her eyes, Mrs. Walker hugged Barbara close. "You already are, sweetheart." "You always were." Monday crept by, the day dragging on as whispers bounced through the halls about the fox spotted at Diner 21. Barbara caught the gossip with a secret, private thrill nobody suspected it was her. She passed Lori in the hallway, exchanged quick, conspiratorial winks, and when the final bell rang, she raced home, desperate to shed her disguise and be herself again. Stepping into her room, Barbara's heart leapt. Her mother had laid out a complete outfit. She slipped on new silky dark blue panties, pantyhose, and a bra, added a short slip, then shimmied into a plaid skirt, green and blue, a perfect fit for her new beginning. A dark green sweater lay waiting for him, but before slipping it on, Barbara decided to attempt her own makeup for the first time. He stood before his mother's vanity, surveying the arsenal of bottles and palettes, replaying in his mind everything Lori had shown him the day before. The result wasn't quite up to Lori's magic, but he felt a cautious pride as he pulled the sweater over his head and brushed his hair into a simple page boy, clumsy but passable. "Hi there, Barbara. How's my girl?" His mother's voice startled him, and he spun to see her in the doorway, smiling. "I see you gave the makeup a try. Not bad for a first effort, but let me show you some tricks." She led him to the bathroom, had him wash off the attempt, and then patiently, step by step, guided him through each stage of application, letting him do the work, giving pointers and praise. When they finished, he looked fresher, more natural, more himself. Now that you're all dressed up, let's get you some hair care of your own. Maybe we'll have dinner out too. Barbara didn't feel the nerves from the day before. Instead, there was a confidence, a lightness, a new sense of possibility. At the lingerie shop, with her mother's help, Barbara picked out bras that fit better, a sleek corset with front lacing, and watched with surprise as her mother referred to her in the feminine, almost unconsciously. She realized, standing in the shop, how much her mother had missed having a daughter. If Evan wanted to fill that space, she would do everything to help. I want you to be happy, Barbara. But promise me, finish school before making any big decisions. There's just one term left. And aside from the Springfest dance, no going to school dressed like this. Barbara nodded, grateful, knowing school was the last place to risk discovery. Driving home, Barbara spotted a prosthetic shop and asked if they could check out some breast forms. Her mother smiled, genuinely supportive. That's a great idea. If they aren't outrageous, maybe we can get you fitted. Inside, the shopkeeper led them to a dedicated breast form room, explaining the differences between models. Barbara, both nervous and excited, tried a pair that matched her skin and size perfectly. They were weighted, lifelike, and instantly made her feel more complete. When she saw the price, Barbara insisted on paying with her own savings. Her mother hesitated. This was a big step, a clear sign of intent, but in the end, agreed to split the cost. She didn't want to lose the bond now growing between them. As the specialist demonstrated how to fit the forms seamlessly, Barbara realized the shopkeeper was surprised, recognizing her client wasn't a girl by birth, but handled it without fuss. When Barbara walked out, she did so with a new confidence and with a natural pair of 36B breasts resting proudly beneath her blouse, feeling more like herself than ever before. "Can you drop me off at Lori's?" "I'll walk home after," Barbara asked, almost humming with excitement. Her mom agreed, but warned her not to stay out too late. At the Evans house, Mrs. Evans greeted Barbara at the door as if she saw young women like her every day. "Come in, Barb. I'll get Lori." Lori nearly bounced down the stairs, eyes wide with anticipation. "Girl, I have something to show you that'll blow your mind." But before she could unveil her surprise, Barbara beat her to it. In Lori's room, Barbara slipped off her sweater and unclasped her bra, baring her new, incredibly realistic breasts. Lori's jaw dropped. "No way! Those can't be real. Can I?" She poked one, surprised by the warmth and softness. "I had no idea they even made things like this." Barbara was glowing, giddy. "Me neither. Mom took me to a special shop, and I tried these on. They're amazing. I can't stop smiling." Before they could gush further, Mrs. Evans called from downstairs. "Barb, your mom's on the phone. Dinner's ready, you'd better get home. You can see Lori tomorrow." That night, Barbara carefully peeled off her breast forms and cleaned them, already missing the way they felt. But she knew she had to keep up appearances at school. Her mom's rules were strict about when and where she could be Barbara. On weekends, though, it was game on. The days crawled until Friday, but as soon as the bell rang, both Barbara and Lori hurried home to transform. That night, Ken came by to pick up Barb for their usual round at Diner 21. Barbara had picked a slightly sheer blouse, loving the way it drew attention. The same boys who'd once teased her now fell over themselves to stare, not recognizing the runt from before. "Fools!" Barbara thought, with a secret wicked grin. She turned to Ken. "Is it always like this? Do guys just lose their minds over a pretty face?" Ken shrugged. "Most of the time. They think you're going to swoon." Barbara grinned. "If I could go out with Tom, I'd give him something to remember. He's been a pain since forever." Ken just laughed and led her to a booth. Barbara had been practicing her voice all week, and tonight, she finally revealed her soft, convincing new tone, ordering her burger, with a feminine lilt that made Ken beam with pride. their moment was interrupted by Tom himself, swaggering up to the table. "Hey, baby! Haven't seen you before. Where have you been hiding?" Barbara leaned in, voice smooth. "Oh, I've always been here. Maybe you just weren't looking close enough." Ken squeezed her arm in warning, but Barbara wasn't done. "You've always got your macho friends to impress. Tell you what." She stood, cupped Tom's face, and kissed him right in front of everyone. As Tom stood stunned, Barbara whispered, "Now you'll remember me." He tried to reach for her again, but she jabbed an elbow into his gut. "Look, but don't touch." Tom slunk back to his friends, and Ken nearly howled with laughter. The notorious Tom, Barbara's old tormentor, had just been publicly bested by the very target of his bullying. He just didn't know it yet. After their meal, they went to the movies, still giggling about Tom's defeat. "What made you do that?" Ken asked, still amazed. Barbara shrugged. "It just felt right." And the look on his face. Bet the whole school knows by Monday. Halfway through the film, Ken slipped his arm around her, and Barbara didn't move away. On the way home, Ken led Barbara into the park, to the very place they first met. He pulled her close and kissed her, and this time, Barbara kissed back. But when Ken's hand found its way under her blouse, fumbling at her bra, she burst out laughing. "Stop it, Kenny! I'm not that easy. Unless you want a mouthful of latex and silicone." They both cracked up. Barbara refastened her blouse and, still smiling, asked Ken to take her home. At Central High, the administration had ditched the old system of separate proms for each class and decided on one enormous Springfest dance, a last glorious hurrah just 2 weeks before the end of the school year. For weeks, Ken and Barbara counted down the days, nerves twisting into excitement. Under her mother's vigilant gaze, Barbara practiced everything walking gracefully, sitting, turning, smiling, all the subtle cues that made her convincing and confident. She'd even started using Samantha's old room as her personal Barbara space, while Evan's room remained untouched, a private retreat for switching back when needed. The big night finally arrived. The dance was being held at the Maplewood Country Club, and Barbara's nerves hummed any misstep tonight would be a disaster. Ken, ever the gentleman, had left nothing to chance. Tuxedo pressed, limousine waiting, a bouquet of perfect flowers, even a new haircut for the occasion. He was every bit the suave escort. Barbara went all out. She spent ages soaking in a fragrant bubble bath, shaving until her skin gleamed. Tonight, she dared to wear barely their silk bikini panties, and her mother helped lace her into the familiar satin corset until her waist shrank to a dramatic 21 inches. Her breast forms were already perfectly placed, and as she pulled on her sheer nylons, she marveled at how feminine she looked, how natural it all felt. Fastening the garters, she admired her long legs, and for the first time, actually believed she was beautiful. Sitting at her vanity, Barbara expertly applied her makeup. A flawless base, soft rose and gray eyeshadow, black eyeliner, and mascara that made her eyes glow. Her mother zipped her into the white dress, smoothing the fabric over her curves, and pinned a delicate shawl around her shoulders. For the first time, Barbara had visited a real beauty salon, and her hair was swept into a chic French twist, leaving wispy tendrils to frame her face. Red patent heels with rhinestone clips added a bold flash of color, and a squirt of perfume was the finishing touch. Ken arrived in a stretch limo, looking sharp and nervous at her front door. They posed for photos, Barbara's mother fussing over every detail, then set off for the dance. The country club was glowing, music drifting out onto the lawn as they stepped inside. Heads turned as they entered, but nobody recognized them. Barbara and Ken found their seats, ironically, right at the table with Tom and his date, Susan. "Hi there, I'm Ken Decker, and this is Barbara Duncan," Ken introduced them. Tom eyed Barbara, suspicion in his voice. "You related to that squirrel, Evan?" Barbara flashed her brightest smile, leaning in. "Why, yes, actually. He's such a little guy. But I think he's kind of cute, don't you?" Tom just snorted. "He's a squirrel in my book." Ken, ever the diplomat, steered the conversation away, and soon they were all laughing about less contentious things. On the dance floor, Ken pulled Barbara close. "Let's just enjoy tonight, Barb. No drama, no Tom, just us." Barbara nodded, caught up in the magic of the evening. Back at the table, Susan leaned over, whispering, "Need to use the ladies' room?" Of course, Barbara joined her, because every secret at a dance is discovered in the bathroom. Susan grinned, lowering her voice. "Tom thinks you're a knockout. Stay away from him, he's mine." Barbara shook her head. "Susan, you can have him. Honestly, I think Tom is obnoxious and belongs in a zoo." Susan burst out laughing. "Yeah, you're not wrong. But we've been together since junior high. Still, thanks for saying it straight." They returned to the table just as the last slow song was playing. Ken took Barbara's arm and led her out, excitement shining in his eyes. "I've got a surprise for you, Barb." He didn't explain, but when the limo pulled up in front of a hotel, Barbara understood. Inside, he guided her to a room he'd reserved for the night. Barbara's heart pounded. She felt like a bride, nerves and butterflies mixing with anticipation. As soon as the door closed, Ken pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "You have no idea how long I've wanted this, Barb. Ever since you stood in my room with just a robe and panties, I've dreamed of this moment." Barbara froze, torn between fear and something exhilarating. Ken's hands gently found the zipper on her dress, and as the white fabric slid to the floor, he held her breathless, trembling, but feeling more desired, more seen than ever before. The Springfest dance at Central High wasn't just the biggest night of the year, it was a turning point. The hours melted away under soft lights and slow songs, and by the end, Barbara was floating on a cloud of nerves and happiness. Ken led her back to the hotel, where he undressed her with slow, deliberate care, kissing her feet, then her legs, making her feel cherished and entirely seen. For the first time, Barbara let herself just exist, nothing hidden. No mask. She lay back, clothed in nothing but delicate panties, her earrings, and an irrepressible smile, while Ken undressed, every gesture tender and respectful. That night, they shared something quietly profound, a trust and vulnerability that deepened everything between them. The next morning, Ken dropped Barbara at home, where her mother waited at the door, a knowing look on her face. "I can tell by that glow you two shared something special last night," she said, her voice gentle but edged with concern. Barbara just blushed, slipped past her, and changed into shorts and a top before returning downstairs. When she came back, she felt different, older, surer, no longer a hesitant child, but a young woman ready to meet her life head-on. "Ken and I have known for a while that we belong together, Mom," Barbara said simply. "Last night, he asked me to marry him." Her mother was stunned. "Married? You're still so young. What about college? I don't know what to say." Barbara didn't blink. "I've been taking hormones since the second week I started living as Barbara, Mom. Haven't you noticed? My breasts are real now. Well, not much, but they're growing. We decided we won't go for full surgery because we want to have children together. I'll be going to secretarial school, Ken's going to state, and after that, we'll get married." Mrs. Walker was speechless, worry and pride tangling in her face. "If you're set on this path, then I'm glad you told me. But I wish you'd come to me about the hormones. Let's go upstairs. Show me these changes you're talking about." Together, they went upstairs, and Barbara bared her chest, showing the budding curves, the softer lines at her hips, the diminished body hair clear proof of her transformation. "Did a doctor monitor any of this?" her mother demanded. Barbara shook her head. "Ken got the hormones for me. I just followed the directions." "That's over now," Mrs. Walker said firmly. "Tomorrow we're seeing a doctor. No more shortcuts." Early the next morning, they were at the doctor's office, Barbara nervous in her jeans and sweater. Mrs. Walker explained everything, asking for a full examination and guidance. The doctor, surprised but thorough, gave Barbara a complete physical and found her healthy. though he stressed she should never take medication not prescribed by a professional. If you're going to continue as Barbara, you'll need electrolysis for your beard. I'll write a note for your legal name change. What's your full name? Barbara Ann Duncan, she answered quietly. The doctor updated her records, and by lunchtime, Barbara and her mother had visited the DMV for a new driver's license and stopped by their lawyer's office to finalize the name change from Evan to Barbara. Back home, Barbara fixed a meal, her world suddenly brighter, more stable. When Ken and his mother, Kathy, arrived, the families sat together, everything out in the open. Donna and Julie compared notes, marveling at their children's determination. "You know Ken gave her those hormones?" Julie asked Kathy, unable to suppress a rueful laugh. "The doctor just about lost it, but Barb's healthy, and she's got her new license and name. I suppose all we can do is help." Kathy shook her head, then grinned. "At least your grandchildren will be natural, not adopted like they might have been if these two had gone further." Their plan never wavered. Barbara finished secretarial school, Ken graduated from state, and soon after, Barbara was a stunning bride Susan, Tom's old girlfriend, now her maid of honor. Within 2 years, they welcomed a daughter, naming her Samantha after Barbara's lost sister, and the grandmothers found a new calling, spoiling their granddaughter rotten. Barbara and Ken built the life they'd dreamed of, brave, unconventional, but wholly theirs. And in the small moments, glances across a kitchen table, the laughter of a child, the gentle, constant support of family, they found the home they'd been searching for all along.